In the bustling heart of New York City, where the skyscrapers stood like silent watchers over the city's endless dance, the season of winter had painted the streets with a fresh coat of snow. The city, known for its relentless pace, slowed down under the weight of the cold, and the festive lights of the holiday season brought a semblance of warmth to the otherwise biting air. Yet beneath this veneer of celebration, there were stories of struggle and solitude, stories like that of an old veteran named Jonathan. Jonathan was a man whose eyes carried the weight of battles fought on a foreign soil, battles that many had forgotten. He was a Vietnam War veteran, now in his late 60s, living on the fringes of society, his uniform long replaced by tattered clothes and his medals traded for the silent company of his memories. He sat on a bench in Central Park, his body hunched against the cold, his gaze lost in the distance where the past seemed to play out before him. The world around him was oblivious to his story. People passed by, their lives moving forward, while Jonathan's seemed stuck in a time when he had fought for their freedom. He had no family, no friends left to remember him, and his only companion was a worn-out photo of his younger self, standing proud in his military regalia. It was on one such cold afternoon that Barron Trump, now a young man with a keen sense of the world beyond his privileged upbringing, found himself walking through Central Park. His father, Donald Trump, had once again made headlines, but Barron sought to make his own mark, one that echoed with humanity rather than controversy. As he walked, his eyes caught sight of Jonathan. There was something in the old man's posture, a silent dignity that spoke volumes. Barron approached, his steps hesitant, but driven by a compassion that had been growing within him. "Excuse me, sir," Barron began, his voice gentle. "Are you all right?" Jonathan looked up, his eyes meeting Barron's, a flicker of surprise and skepticism crossing his face. "I've been better, son," he replied, his voice rough from disuse. Barron sat beside him, ignoring the snow that seeped through his own clothes. They spoke, or rather, Jonathan began to share stories of his time in service, tales of bravery, loss, and the silent return to a country that had moved on without him. The conversation between Barron and Jonathan was not just a passing moment, it became an hour of mutual learning. Barron listened, his heart touched by the sacrifices this man had made. In return, he shared stories of his life, not as a Trump, but as a young man trying to find his place in a world that judged him by his name. The bond they formed was unexpected, bridging the gap between generations, between wealth and poverty, between a world of war and one of peace. Barron learned of the struggles veterans faced, the lack of recognition, the battle with PTSD, and the relentless grip of homelessness. Barron, moved by Jonathan's tales, decided he couldn't let this man return to the streets. He called his mother, Melania, who had been working on various charitable initiatives. With her help, they arranged for Jonathan to have a warm meal, a place to stay for the night, and medical attention he so desperately needed. But Barron didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, he worked to ensure Jonathan had more than just temporary relief. He used his connections, not for personal gain, but to help this one veteran. He found resources for veterans' housing, connected Jonathan with support groups, and even ensured he had the chance to speak at a veterans event about his experiences. Jonathan's life began to change. The warmth of a community that had once forgotten him now embraced him. He found a small apartment through a veterans housing program, and with Barron's help, he started to share his story, advocating for better support for those who served. His voice, once silenced by despair, now rang with purpose. Barron, in turn, found direction in his life. He began to work more closely with veterans' charities, using his platform to shine a light on the issues they faced. His name, once synonymous with political controversy, now stood for something else: advocacy, compassion, and the power of one person to make a difference. As years passed, the friendship between Barron and Jonathan deepened. Jonathan became like a grandfather to Barron, teaching him lessons of life, resilience, and the true meaning of sacrifice. They would often sit in that same park, now not as stranger and benefactor, but as friends who had helped each other heal. Jonathan's story became a beacon for other veterans, a testament to never giving up hope. Barron, meanwhile, became known not just for his last name, but for his heart. He established a foundation aimed at supporting veterans, ensuring they had the respect and resources they deserved after serving their country. On one particularly cold winter evening, years after their first meeting, a gathering was held in Central Park to honor veterans. Among the attendees was Barron, now a young adult leading his foundation, and Jonathan, looking healthier than he had in decades. They stood together, emblematic of what true service looked like, not just in the battlefield, but in the everyday fight to remember and support those who had given so much. Their story was a reminder that heroes come in all forms, and sometimes the greatest battles are fought not with weapons, but with acts of kindness and recognition. In the heart of New York, where the cold could be unforgiving, the warmth of their bond and the legacy they created together stood as a testament to the enduring spirit of service and the power of human connection to bring light even to the darkest corners. With Jonathan's newfound stability, he started volunteering at the Veterans Center, sharing his story to inspire others. His life, once marked by invisibility, now had a purpose, his voice a beacon for those still lost in the shadow of their service. Barron, recognizing the impact of storytelling, invited Jonathan to speak at various events, including fundraisers for his newly established Veterans Foundation. The Trump Veterans Foundation became more than just Barron's project. It was a reflection of his commitment to change the narrative around his name. He worked tirelessly, not just as a figurehead, but as an active member, delving into policy advocacy, securing grants, and even visiting veterans' homes across the country to listen to their stories and needs firsthand. Each year, as winter approached, Barron organized a gala not for the glitz, but for the cause. This year's event was special. It was to be held in Central Park, where Jonathan and Barron had first met. The theme was Echoes of Valor, celebrating veterans' stories through art, music, and personal narratives. Jonathan was the keynote speaker, his once weary voice now resonant with passion. He spoke of the cold he had endured, not just from the weather, but from the chill of societal neglect. He then contrasted that with the warmth he found through friendship, advocacy, and the support of those like Barron who chose to see beyond the surface. The gala was a success, not measured by the funds raised, but by the connections made. Veterans shared their tales, listeners were moved to action, and the night ended with a promise of continued support and remembrance. As time went on, Barron and Jonathan's relationship evolved. Jonathan became a mentor to Barron, teaching him about resilience, humility, and the importance of listening. Barron, in turn, helped Jonathan navigate the modern world, from technology to social media, where he could share his message with a broader audience. Together, they worked on a book, Valor in Shadows, chronicling not just Jonathan's journey, but the stories of many veterans. It became a bestseller, not for sensationalism, but for its raw honesty and call to action. Royalties from the book went directly to the foundation, further empowering their mission. The effects of their work spread like ripples in a pond. Schools began to incorporate veterans' stories into their curricula, teaching the next generation the value of service and sacrifice. New policies were pushed through, thanks to Barron's advocacy, ensuring better mental health support, housing, and job opportunities for veterans. Jonathan, once a solitary figure on a park bench, now walked those same paths with a community behind him. He saw young people, inspired by his and Barron's story, volunteering, speaking out, and even joining the military with a deeper understanding of what it might entail. Decades passed, and the legacy of Barron Trump and Jonathan became entrenched in New York's social fabric. A statue was erected in Central Park, not of a general or a politician, but of two figures, one young, one old, sitting together, symbolizing the bridge between generations and the power of empathy. Barron, now a respected figure in philanthropy, continued his work, his name synonymous with change rather than controversy. Jonathan lived out his days in peace, surrounded by a family he had helped create through his advocacy, his life a testament to the fact that one can find purpose at any age. On a crisp winter evening, as another year's gala was about to commence, Barron stood before the crowd, now gray at the temples, but his passion undimmed. He spoke of Jonathan, who had passed a few winters before, leaving behind a legacy that would outlast them all. He lit a ceremonial flame, an eternal one, dedicated to all veterans, to remind everyone that the warmth of human kindness could melt the coldest of winters. The light flickered, reflecting in the eyes of the gathered, each person carrying their own promise to remember, to act, and to ensure no veteran would ever feel the chill of forgetfulness again. In New York, under the watchful gaze of the city's towering structures, the story of Barron Trump and Jonathan became a legend. One of redemption, of understanding, and of the unyielding spirit of those who serve. It was a narrative that whispered through the ages, a reminder that even in the coldest of times, the human heart could burn bright with compassion.